If you've ever found yourself in a position where you've wondered just what it's like to follow some of these extreme diets, then I recommend you keep watching. There are different versions of the carnivore diet. Those who suffer from autoimmune diseases, they tend to only do a strict meat diet, nothing else. No cool drinks, no cheese, dairy, eggs, none of those things, simply because even those foods can cause an inflammatory response with someone that's got an autoimmune disease. Since I don't suffer from any of that and I'm a healthy person in general, I decided to do the slightly less strict version, which is just an exclusion of everything plant-based and only eating animal-sourced foods, which includes dairy, so in other words, cheese, milk, yogurt, eggs, a diverse range of animal products such as meat, chicken, and fish, but nothing plant-based. The only place where I was a little bit lenient with approval from the dietitian is I still had my coffee with a little bit of sweetener in it, and I could add some spices or herbs to a limited extent into my food. Now let's break it down. Week 1. This was interesting. Obviously, the excitement is there. I'm starting this new diet and I love to try new things. So naturally, I was just all for it. But I was really overwhelmed with the fat content and the protein content in a single meal, in the sense that I felt so full that I couldn't at all keep to my calorie intake for the day. I ate way less than I should have in the first 2 to 3 weeks because I just couldn't eat that much. I was so sufficed that I just simply didn't want to eat more. I think that, and the fact that my natural personality is one that craves diversity, craves new and interesting things. So eating the same meal, every single meal, every single day can get a little bit boring and lifeless, which is exactly what happened. I felt like, oh, do I really need to eat red meat again? And I'm sorry, I didn't think I would ever be able to say that because I really love red meat. But honestly, I got tired of it in the beginning. And then afterwards, two things happened. I first realized that I need to start increasing my calorie intake because one, I'm still a lactating mother. And although my child is way old enough to get sufficient nutrition from meals, I'm doing it for different reasons still, such as immunity and just the backup during times such as teething or disease. And I didn't want to compromise that. So when I saw my little one getting frustrated with me because of the drop in my supply, that kind of urged me to just stick to my calories. Plus, I didn't want to compromise my results at all and lose too much muscle mass or, feel too fatigued or harm my body by losing weight at too rapid rate. So I increased, whether I wanted to or not, I increased my calorie intake, which was more towards what the dietitian recommended. And I started getting a bit more diverse with my foods. I would, instead of just having a boring chicken breast, I would cook some chicken breast and cream for like a nice creamy chicken soup, something like that. I even started making desserts, but by that I basically just mean like a custard type, creme brulee type dessert where I just use the cream and some egg yellow and splash of vanilla and sweetener that I was allowed. And at the end of the day, end up with a nice custard. I was even a little naughty and added some cinnamon. So on the days that I didn't get all my dairy intake for the day, I would or I'd save it from the previous day. And then the next day, I'd have like a milk tarty type dessert. Or I'd mix some gelatin and cream and sweetener, also for a nice flan or like milky jelly type thing. So I started getting a little bit creative in terms of my diet and what I could eat, and started making like interesting omelets with different types of cheeses or different types of protein, like a nice biltong and feta omelet, for example, as opposed to just having 2 eggs in the morning. I also started eating some biltong for snacks, and I upped my dairy intake a little bit because that's something I really missed, and I also felt that my body needed it, and that really helped me get through the last couple of weeks. Overall, the first week, my energy levels almost immediately improved. I've done ketosis before, or followed a low carb diet and entered into ketosis. So I'm pretty used to the feeling of going over into ketosis, that whole keto flu story. And my symptoms isn't normally an extended period of time since my body's quite adapted to going to and fro low carb and high or regular carb diets. So I went through that transition from carbohydrates to ketosis quite quickly and effortlessly. But one thing that was very, very interesting with the diet is normally when I follow a low carb diet and I go into ketosis, I experience what some other people experience too, which is keto insomnia. And I'm not quite sure the exact reason behind it, but a lot of people go through it and I've gone through it as well. And I expected the same thing with the carnivore diet, and I actually expected it to be a bit worse. But to my surprise, my sleep quality actually improved, and not a little, but drastically. Normally, I'm a person that takes quite a while to shut my brain down at night. I take quite a while to fall asleep. And if I wake up in the middle of the night for whatever reason, in this case, a toddler that was still suckling at that point, I would nurse or get up or whatever the case may be, and I'd stay awake for a little bit. But in this case, and I first need to give a bit of background regarding this, our child was sick and he was teething. So he was just suckling like all through the night. And we had very hectic work schedules. So we ended up working late almost every night for about 3 weeks. Despite all of these things, obviously being tired, you sleep a little bit deeper, but I've had similar experiences and our conditions have been similar. There were other times when teething and sickness and work was a problem and we really slept very little, that I would just feel so knackered the next day. I would be so tired, I wouldn't be able to do anything. I'd become dizzy and nauseous to the extent that I was tired, where my sleep quality improved to such an extent that even with very, very little sleep, with very frequent night wakings, I actually felt way more rested than I would in similar situations at different times. And that was an extreme shock to me. It wasn't a fact of laying awake at night, taking a while to fall asleep. It was a matter of close my eyes and in a few minutes I'm gone. And I sleep so deeply that my husband would have to wake me up or go fetch our child, either way, because I'm not awake, which is really a first for me. So that was such an improvement. And because of the better quality sleep and the more stable blood sugar that I experienced because of the no carb diet, my work focus and my energy levels during the day was just simply like amazing. Honestly, that is the most focused I've been and the most just relaxed behind a computer that I've been in. I don't like sitting still for hours at a time working. And I mean, I'm in research, so you do have to do a lot of reading and difficult reading at times. And I need to do that with a lot of breaks, where in this case, I didn't find that. I felt that I could sit down for much longer periods. I could focus for longer periods and not be as drained when I've worked through a difficult task. So that was an added bonus. It's just my focus and my energy. Now, in general, my energy levels was really great. And I also didn't expect it to be that good, because in low carb diets, I normally feel good. But it's not like I felt this good. I can honestly say this is the best that I felt like almost ever, which I was positively surprised by. I was afraid of maybe having a few like deficiencies, or just that complete lack of other ingredients in the diet would sort of just dampen my energy a bit, but it was not the case at all. A question that people often ask or want to ask but don't have the guts is, what about bathroom habits? And I can tell you, no problem at all. This has been the most comfortable, effortless, mess-free, time-efficient bathroom habits that I've had ever in my life, apart from 1 week in the middle. So week 1 and week 1.5, I was a little bit not constipated, but I could notice a change in my fiber intake. Then I don't know if it's something that I ate or was it part of the adaptation phase, that I just had a runny stomach for almost a week, and it wasn't like cramping or sore or anything. So I don't think I had food poisoning or ate something bad at all. I just think it was part of the diet, because I have seen other people report similar symptoms. They either go extremely constipated for a while or extreme diarrhea for a while, and then it sort of fades away. And then it, like, my body adapted, it went to normal, and actually better to normal. And the frequency was of such that it didn't cause any discomfort. It was actually quite convenient, to be honest. And I've never used this little toilet paper in my life. Sorry for the TMI, but like in terms of per session, get in, get out, like no mess, no fuss. Honestly, very nice. What I did experience, obviously, though, in that time that I had a bit of a runny stomach, I needed to supplement with some electrolytes because I could feel my electrolyte balance wasn't 100% there, and I didn't want to risk any sort of issues. And that was my condition for doing any of these diets, is if at any point in time I start feeling weak or fatigued, or that I'm doing harm to my body, that I would supplement in one way or another. Luckily, with some rehydration supplements, I felt hunky-dory again. Now, I don't understand the mechanism of action or the why behind why a person would get a runny stomach. I would rather expect constipation, and it apparently has to do something with the water uptake efficiency, but I'm not quite certain. It was weird. It was quickly resolved, and I could continue the 6 weeks with ease. Now, what did I miss? I missed the color of the diet. But since we had such a busy time, it was actually such a relief, because I was really if I was really hungry and I didn't have the time to make something, I just snack on a bit of droewors, or I'd snack on a piece of cheese or something small. And a bit later, maybe I would just make some chicken breast, or I'd make a piece of meat that I thawed earlier, took it out of the freezer this morning. I've never had such like simple cooking before. The simplicity and the focus on whole ingredients was sort of interesting as well, because suddenly I need to only focus on the few herbs that I'm allowed, or the few spices that I'm allowed, and the ingredients that I have at my availability. And that sparked something interesting when we went shopping, because suddenly you walk into this shopping mall and you go into the grocery store, and maybe 3 aisles are whole ingredients or whole foods. All of the rest is either convenient products or over processed, like ultra processed foods. And I'm not saying any of those ingredients or processed foods are bad, although a lot of research links to ultra processed foods, because the more processes a food goes through, the less bioavailable and the less effective the different nutrients in that food becomes, and the food matrix gets broken down. So the benefit you would have received from the food or from the individual ingredients in there is just simply not there anymore. I mean, imagine making a salad. It's got so many different ingredients. That's great. The number of ingredients is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you took all those same ingredients, put them through heating and bleaching and different preservatives and processes to kind of stabilize this food into something, let's say a health bar or whatever, even though it might be the exact same ingredients, that health bar would not provide you with the same benefits as the salad with the whole food ingredients would have. And that's something that I know, like consciously, but subconsciously it's not quite there. It's when it comes to action, I still love going for the ultra processed stuff or the convenience stuff, and I myself still sometimes fall for the healthy labeled stuff, even though it's basically just marketing. And yes, there are good stuff out there, stuff that makes our life so much easier. I mean, I've had to travel a lot, and I have been so thankful for the energy bar that I've left in my car when I couldn't make it home in time and I felt my blood sugar dipping or something, and I had an energy bar and I was good to go again. Just a simple example where I was so hungry, I was basically becoming hangry. You know, so there are those life-saving moments. So we do rely on different processes to preserve ingredients to get to other countries. I'm not ridiculing that, but it was a mind shift to go into a grocery store and have one freezer that I'm limited to in terms of my buying options. It made me think of how we view the whole climate perspective in terms of the footprint of the products, because obviously the more processes a product goes through, the more electricity, the more water, the more resources, the further it has to travel, the more fuel it uses, and most often it also has more plastic packaging, more single-use plastics. All of these things which are great and has contributed to the food system in the way that we see it today, but it has also contributed to the way the food system is today. I mean, there's a lot of products that we wouldn't have access to if it weren't for all of those things, and it's great innovations, but there is a limit, and I think we should sort of rewire the way that we see foods, both in terms of health and in terms of climate sustainability, and especially on a financial aspect. Because of that, I expect the carnivore to be so expensive, because that's the message that we sort of get, is that animal proteins are so expensive. And it is true. I'm not saying that it is not true. Per kilogram, a lot of people cannot afford animal protein, which is very sad, because animal proteins are the most bioavailable proteins out there. Apart from soya, which is the most complete plant protein, no other protein comes near animal proteins, regardless of source. And so a lot of people don't have access per kilogram of product to that good quality protein, although per bioavailable protein, it might look a little different, but that's a discussion for a different day. So because of the notion that animal products might be so expensive and that it really is unaffordable for a lot of people, our food budget actually got smaller, because I'm used to convenience. I'll say it straight out there. Other times I make it myself, but in the times that I need it, I don't mind getting it out of the cupboard. I like all these little extras, and I like condiments, and I like diversity in my plate. So where normally I'd have the chicken breast with a broccoli salad, with this, with that, and maybe I'd have a dessert. Now it was only the chicken, and it might have been a double portion chicken, but considering all those things that I would have had on my plate, only having the chicken, for example, actually worked out cheaper, because I could also buy in bulk, put everything in the freezer, and just thaw it as I needed it. And that was actually way more convenient, easier, and surprisingly worked out cheaper than I expected, and cheaper than my omnivorous diet. Other great benefits that I saw, and I know I'm listing all the benefits, but why this was such a great experience is because I've never done the carnivore before. So I was so excited to see what happens, and I was totally open for like positive, negative, everything. But I can honestly say that it was a near almost positive, almost only positive experience. Apart from the diversity and that I missed just having color in my plate, I never had a single craving apart from chocolate. And that was like, especially in the first 2 weeks. And it was more or less around the time where I was supposed to have PMS symptoms that I was craving chocolate. But why I'm saying supposed to is I didn't have a single other PMS symptom. And that is a first for me. Normally, I feel quite like bloated and just yucky, tired, fatigued, a lot of cravings, and a little bit irritable. And sometimes I can get a bit sleepless night or a bit of insomnia beforehand. I had none of that, to the extent that when my cycle hit, it actually caught me by surprise, because based on the birth control method that I'm on, sometimes my cycle is a bit irregular or sporadic, or sometimes like not even there. And I expected not even to have a cycle, but smack bam on the day that the calendar said it would have happened, it happened, but with no warning other than my chocolate craving. So that was a breath of fresh air, because it didn't impact me negatively at all. And for those women struggling with hormone issues and your things are just up and down, I'd want to say work with a dietitian to maybe do a low carb or a carnivore diet maybe for a month or two. Certain diets at certain times can provide beneficial results. And in this case, I can definitely see why low carb diets are used to treat conditions like polycystic ovary syndrome or the likes of. So that was a benefit. And my overall mood was just much more stable, because I think my blood sugar was more stable and my gut stabilized. So there was no changes that was occurring frequently, because I think whatever was happening in my microbiome, it adapted, and then it sort of just was stable all through, all through. So I think the stability of the diet and the fact that it was a really restrictive, completely elimination diet is why I saw the benefits that I saw, because I literally had no inflammatory foods that I ate. And what I'm saying now might be a shock to you, because a message that we've often heard in the past is that meat can be inflammatory, but there's also research that doesn't back it. And because of that fact, I was curious to see what it does on my inflammatory markers. So I started the carnivore diet by measuring my inflammation markers. And I mean, I'm healthy, I'm not supposed to have high levels, so I didn't. But after the 6 weeks, my inflammation levels dropped despite the fact of not even having high inflammation and only eating a high meat diet. My inflammation still dropped after the 6 weeks, which was really great. But now I gave a little bit too much away. So since I'm starting on the results, here are my results. My calcium levels actually dropped a smidge. They were quite high, almost on the too high end as well, and they dropped, but within a normal range. And that was also because I didn't consume as much dairy as I did, simply because it would potentially kick me out of ketosis. I couldn't have as much dairy as I wanted, and my calcium levels dropped, and I didn't have any other fruits or vegetables to sort of supplement my calcium. My vitamin B12 levels, they were actually way too high beforehand, like in the way above the range that they should be. And that's when I learned I took a little bit too many energy drinks. I mean, I wouldn't take something like that more than once a day, but still, those things have a lot of B vitamins in it. And I every now and again take a multivitamin. I didn't in the past 12 weeks, apart from once in the vegan diet, or twice, which I'll get to in the next part. Without the supplementation of the multivitamins and the B vitamins that are normally in these energy type of drinks or bioplus, my B12 levels stabilized. Then my iron levels was more or less the same, but my iron stores went up drastically. Then my cholesterol, as expected, went up. It was 6, it went up to 6.2. But my triglycerides, which has to do with your blood sugar and that you don't want very high, it was 0.7. It went down to 0.6. So that went down by 0.1, even though it's not a lot. My HDL, which is the good cholesterol, and I'm deliberately using inverted commas for these cholesterol things because of what the research is currently saying, and I'll also get to that. My HDL increased, so my healthy cholesterol increased with 0.1, so from 1.6 to 1.7. And my LDL, but what was really interesting about this is the ratio that the dietitians use to determine cardiovascular risk. My cardiovascular risk with both the measures that they use went down. So despite the fact that my LDL levels went up, my cardiovascular risk went down. You don't only get your HDL, LDL, and triglycerides, but in the LDL, there are also different types. So you can't just measure LDL and use that as an indicator of cardiovascular risk, because you still have different types of LDL, a larger particle size and a smaller particle size. The larger LDL can have a protective effect on cardiovascular risk, and that has been confirmed by quite a few studies that have found, despite the high saturated fat content in dairy, that dairy has a protective effect over cardiovascular risk, either neutral or protective, but none indicate that there is a higher risk of cardiovascular disease with high dairy intake, and I'm specifically speaking about whole fat dairy intake. So that was probably the most exciting part, is to see the effect on my cholesterol. I had a hint that would have been something that might have happened, but I wasn't entirely sure, because I'm only one person and the studies were done on different people in different circumstances. It could have been coincidence, but the fact that I saw the exact same thing was to me just so exciting, because that's sort of like the fun about research. Now, in terms of my fat and my muscle mass stayed almost exactly the same, but dropped just a smidge. Now, one of the reasons might be potentially because I didn't have enough glycogen stores for the extent to which I was exercising, and because of that initial phase that I wasn't taking in enough calories, my muscles started to break down. So that was, despite the extremely high protein content, the bit of a dip that I saw in my muscle mass. And I lost 2 kilograms of fat. And I made sure to eat some carbohydrates before doing my in-body scan, just to adjust for any changes to my weight that would have been attributed to water weight. So I already had my carbohydrate stores up again. In other words, water weight would have been balanced out, and still with that, I lost 2 kilograms. So that was really just an added bonus, although I didn't do any of this for specific weight loss or anything like that. my skin completely cleared. But since I try to pay attention to my skin in terms of moisturizer application, that even went down. Like the need to moisturize went down, and my skin also felt stronger. Like if I would have a breakout or just a pimple and I'd scratch it, it would normally take quite a while to heal, or it would scratch very easily. Where in this case, if I caught myself scratching, then it wouldn't be the same case. I wouldn't immediately do damage, and if there was damage, then it would heal much quicker. My skin almost seemed a little bit oily, which didn't feel natural to me, but it didn't cause any problems. Like it didn't cause breakouts. So I'm wondering if the natural moisture levels and oil of my skin was just starting to sort of sort itself out. But as I mentioned, I did have times where I felt the need to supplement with a bit of rehydration, like a rehydration supplement with electrolytes. Um, and there were about 2 or 3 times that I did that I felt the need, which tells me that maybe something in terms of my electrolytes isn't quite right. That obviously I'm not necessarily equipped to know what the reason is. I'm not an expert in those type of things, but that already gave me a hint that this isn't a long-term solution. But the fact that I could sustain this diet for 6 weeks with, almost without any effort, tells me that this is something that I'm sure a lot of people can benefit by in the short term. And it's something that I would even, do again in the future if I have a stressful deadline coming up and I just need to focus, don't have time to cook a lot, and I need my focus in terms of work. It's definitely something I would do. Or if I want to maybe lose weight and just focus on eating simple meals, it's something I would do. So in terms of an elimination diet and having a very easy diet to follow, this like really won in that sense, which is why I wouldn't mind doing it again, although I don't necessarily have a reason to. But in terms of long term, there's not a lot of research out there yet. There are people who absolutely thrive on this diet, but most of the time it's the people with autoimmune diseases who really get a big inflammatory response when they eat certain types of fruits and vegetables. So they tend to do better with just a very simple diet, which is like a carnivore diet. And in those instances, I can see why people benefit. And I think if you are somebody who suffers from something like that, or you think you respond bad to a food, then I think something like a carnivore is ideal to get as a baseline, because you can get basically everything you need from meat. You can even get like vitamin C and those type of things if you eat sufficient diverse animal products, if you eat liver and other types of organs, and you make bone broth, and you eat like everything of the animal, then you would be able to get all the nutrients you need from animal sourced foods. So in terms of elimination diet, and then gradually adding foods one at a time to see how your body reacts, that can be a great strategy for a person to find out what food tolerances and intolerances they have. And there are people who have been on a carnivore lifestyle for years and years and years, and they have great success. But there are also people who never get rid of the diarrhea, who never get rid of the constipation. And there are people who start suffering from muscle loss. For those reasons, and the fact that there's not enough research out there, it's not something that I would feel comfortable doing long term, because I don't know the effect yet. But when it comes to cardiovascular health and micronutrient deficiencies, I don't think that the carnivore should get the bad rap that it usually does. And stuff like the cholesterol, the cardiovascular risk, and the inflammation, all things that animal sourced foods are normally ridiculed for. Based on the research that I've recently been reading and what I've now seen in my own experience, I can say that I don't think the research and the guidelines are as dated as they should be, and that the recent research that is coming out should be communicated much more widely. And it was great to see the confirmation of that. So overall, it was really a wonderful learning curve. It was great to just be able to cook simply and to have such high focus levels, such high energy levels, and to see how my blood minerals and vitamins responded. But I can say with honesty that I'm really glad now, after the vegan diet as well, that I'm now back in an omnivore diet. It's not something that I would have maintained for longer than the 6 weeks at all. Even though I enjoyed it, it was fun. And now I'm back to an omnivore diet, because that is also what the research shows, is that the The most sustainable diet in terms of lifestyle and health is an omnivorous diet, as recently found by, for example, the Pure Healthy Diet Score, which I'll also link for you.